Hello, and welcome to the Building an Indie Business podcast with SupremeRumHam. I'm your host, Alex Edmonds. Today, I'm all about the roadmap. I wanted to update you on all the things on the roadmap currently because it's the end of the year and I just want to give you guys an update. Today, I will be discussing the original roadmap. What I've already discussed, I'm going to go over it a bit. Things I haven't mentioned, and what's most important to me that's on the roadmap right now. Okay, so let's get into it. The original roadmap had the forum, which I've been working on nonstop. It's the only part of the roadmap that I work on. That will be done, let's say, by the end of February. Mark it down. As soon as the forum is done, I'm gonna throw a huge celebration on this podcast. You will know about it. Okay. The next thing that was on the original roadmap is chat. And originally, what I had for the idea is that I would build a chat feature by myself in Vanilla.js. Now, I'm thinking that the chat feature will just be a link to the Telegram chat. I haven't decided yet because I feel that the Telegram chat, it's a barrier to entry for anyone who wants to join the chat. If someone who doesn't use Telegram wants to join the chat, then that's a barrier for them to join the chat. But I feel like if the chat is part of the website, then there's no barrier for them to join the chat. So I haven't really decided. I'll figure that out after the forum. The forum is my priority right now. The third thing that was the part of the original roadmap is articles. And what this is me writing about my experience and my ideas about podcasting. So monetization, how to start a podcast, how to get podcast ideas. I want to write about all these things and allow people to see them when they get on the website to help them out if they don't have a podcast yet. Okay, so the final thing that was on the original roadmap is events. And what events I was thinking about is like a digital meetup, things like that. I only really thought of the digital meetup only, no other events. But I'll think of some other stuff. Okay, so on to things I've already discussed. One part of the roadmap that I've already discussed is the newsletter. I had a whole episode about that. So to refresh your memory, the newsletter will be like information about the podcast industry, things that are going on, new products, if any company raises money. I have a list about 10 news sources, and every week I will send out a newsletter based on interesting articles that I find on those 10 news sources. Another part of the newsletter, which is to me the most important part, is I'm also going to promote members of the community. So any community member that has a podcast, I will feature them in the newsletter. And if no new members join that week, I'm just going to feature someone who has an episode that I like, because I listen to everyone's podcast in the community. So if there's a podcast episode from the community that really stands out to me, I'm going to add that to the newsletter so people can listen to it as well. Okay. The rest of them I've really only glossed over, so I'm going to go into more detail. A resources page. So what I'm thinking for this is everyone's always asking about what mic to use, what mic stand to use, what software. So it's going to be like an FAQ page where I can just have a place to list all the resources I use, what software to interview people with, and so that anyone who asks about any of those questions, I can just point them to that page. The next thing was a requested feature by David Shaw, one of the nicest people in the community. We were talking on the Telegram chat, and he just kind of glossed over this idea, and I had to ask him more about it, what he's thinking about it. So it's a page to listen to everyone's podcasts. And so what he wants is to be able to have a playlist of everyone's podcasts in the community. So that way he can just go to the page and listen to everyone's podcast in the community. It's like a playlist for him. So I don't know how to do this programmatically yet. So that feature's a bit in the future, way in the future, not a bit actually. I don't even think I could build that in 2020. So yeah, but that is on the roadmap. The next feature that I plan to build, or that's on the roadmap, is a classifieds page for podcast hosts or guests. And what this is for podcast hosts or someone who wants to be a guest to post an ad on this page and make a pitch for why they want a podcast host or to be a guest on a podcast. So this is basically a job board for podcast hosters or people that want to find hosts for their podcast and people who want to be guests for a podcast. And this will be a paid feature. So yeah, it's like I said, it's basically a job board, so I can build it right now, but the like I said, the form is my top priority. Okay. The next thing on the roadmap that I've already discussed is a job board, and this will be for companies that are looking to hire people for anything in the podcast industry. Editors, people to host their podcasts, people to distribute their podcasts, things like that. The next thing on the roadmap that I've discussed already, and the final thing, is a Telegram bot. And why I want to build this is so that people in the Telegram chat already have an easy transition to the website. So they can post to the forum from the Telegram bot, or with the Telegram bot. So yeah. Okay. Moving on to things I haven't mentioned. Twitter authentication. And I really recently came up with this idea to have Twitter authentication. I can do this on Firebase. I just need to figure it out. I have already signed up to be a developer with Twitter's API. I can't even remember which Twitter account I used for this. It was either my personal one or the podcast Twitter account. One of the two. So I can do this with Firebase. I just need to figure out how to do it. I need to go through the docs. I'll probably do it after I finish the forum. Okay. So the next thing I haven't mentioned on regards to the roadmap is videos for the community. And what this is me helping people in the community visually figure out how to do things. So the very first video I created for this feature is how to upload an RSS feed to every major platform in the for podcast players. If you want to listen to that or watch that, I'll put it in the show notes. I also want to do like how to create a podcast, how to edit a podcast. Basically just me helping people in the community. Okay. And so the next thing I haven't mentioned is the community podcast. I've talked about this on this podcast, but I haven't really gone on about what it is exactly. So what this is a podcast for the community, for people who don't have a podcast right now and are on the fence about starting a podcast. They can use the community podcast to get the experience of podcasting, hosting an episode, and they don't have to go through the hassle of creating a podcast. So like they don't have to go through the video of how to get their podcast on every platform. I've already done it for them. And they can also introduce themselves to the community and get followers from that podcast episode, because I will be distributing it in the normal fashion that I distribute my podcast. So I already have all that stuff down. They just need to record it, send me the recording, and send me what they want in the show notes, and they get the experience of podcasting. Okay, the next thing that I haven't mentioned on the roadmap is WordPress to Ghost. So right now, all my articles are on my personal WordPress blog, and actually David, who recommended the page for listening to everyone's podcast, he has been pushing me to move all of my stuff to ghost.org. And what I plan to do is, I plan to move all of my articles to a dedicated ghost blog for open podcasts. I haven't had time to look into this. Like I said, the forum is my priority, so it's in the back of my mind. It's there, but it's not a priority. Okay. The final thing I haven't mentioned is podcast recommendations page. And what I plan for this is obviously podcast recommendations. I don't know, though, if it's going to be podcast recommendations in the community, so podcasts from people in the community, or include podcasts that are from out of the community. Like if Joe Rogan has a really good podcast episode, will I allow people to recommend that podcast or that podcast episode? I don't know. I haven't decided, but I'll figure that out after the forum, because for the millionth time this episode, the podcast forum is my priority. Alright, so most important to me, can you guess what the first thing is? It's the forum. What do you know? Okay. The next thing that's most important to me is the Telegram bot, because I really want to have an easy transition for people in the Telegram chat to move on to the actual website. So after I finish the forum, by the end of February, I will be working on a Telegram bot. Okay. The third thing that is most important to me, the third out of 4, is the classifieds page. I gotta monetize the community somehow, the classifieds page will not cost a lot. It'll be like $1 or $2 to post the ad for the hosts or the guests. And the real reason I want to add a paywall is because I want to prevent spam. So if the page is free to post on, I know there will be spam, but if someone has to pay $1 or $2, they're not gonna spam that section of the website. They're gonna put a lot of effort into the ad because they're paying for it. Yeah, and the only thing really stopping me, or that why it's gonna take me a while to figure that out, is because I need to learn how to add a paywall. I haven't learned that yet. After the forum, I'll figure that out. Really, I'm realizing that every website is just a version of Twitter. So Airbnb is just like Twitter, but with pictures. A job board is just listings. It's like tweets, but in a different format. So every website is just Twitter in a different format. And the reason why I'm thinking this way is because how I'm building the forum is an instructional video on how to build a Twitter clone in React. So yeah, just everything is just Twitter to me. And yeah, okay. So the final thing that's most important to me is the job board. And why this is the final most important thing to me is because I have to monetize the website somehow. And yeah, I gotta pay those server fees. Okay. Thank you for listening. I know this is probably my longest episode next to the Evil by Design book discussion episode. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you want to host an episode of the podcast, the community podcast, let me know. Come join the Telegram chat. It'll be in the show notes. Have a nice day. Thank you for listening. Bye.